Years ago, I filmed vlogs from South Korea where I was reading a book that was half fiction, half nonfiction, but all blended in, right? It was scientists who made projections in a fictional story about how climate emergency would unfold, and it included information about Canada. I can tell you that Canadians will never favor a Green Party, in part because the Greens aren't as green as they think they are, but they still are too green for Canadians. And the reason for that reflects the question I would ask. You know, if I was allowed to ask a question in the debates tonight, I would ask whoever is after you win, or should you win, how do you propose to address this issue? And that's kind of the issue where, you know, Canadians would never vote for Green, because Canadians are like this. They want to blame, and when you ask them, let's say, well, that person didn't have high enough standards, or didn't think about us, or didn't think in the long term, or didn't think in this big way. But when you analyze kind of their answers, Canadians, is they kind of, let's say, want to blame somebody for, let's say, not having the right standards, or not taking on enough sacrifices in that hard job that it is to be prime minister or a leader of any country during the accelerating Anthropocene. But I would say, hey, realizing the three common patterns of Canadian culture is, how do you propose so-and-so candidate to take on the entire responsibility for cultural repair, for problem solving, for creating what Canadians blame this guy from before to not have done. And really that's what it is Canadians as a majority, and any people primate around the world, don't want to take on the sacrifices, or suffer the hardships, or make a change in their lives, or give up something. They want more all the time, but they want problems to be solved. So that means you need candidates with powers, right? That are superheroes or wizards or whatever. Because Canadians won't. So I would say, how do you propose to take on all of these sacrifices and hardships onto yourself if you're, elected prime minister, knowing that Canadians are against it? And me, I've seen it in work industries a lot. I've seen how it gets to the point that I'm shunned a little bit for having higher standards and getting more results, let's say in education or mental health related fields. And it gets to the point I'm not given jobs, or even if I am, maybe it's volunteer, but it's still, they want me to be part of what doesn't work, or they don't become learner-centered, because they certainly aren't, because there wouldn't be these systemic issues in education, and they're not patient-centered because there wouldn't be these systemic issues in addictions and mental health. So I'm penalized to the point that I'm not even given a chance to demonstrate the success I have with the learners or the patients. And when I do accidentally, they might think, then I'm penalized for it. No more work, or you just need to get that certificate that your supervisor has that isn't as good as you. Instead of saying, hey, Martin, what certificates did you get to achieve results better than your supervisor? So again, there's no effort, right? The intellectual laziness, the lack of really admitting this as voters makes it that nobody is really responsible enough, or at least as a majority. I would say 97% of voters, especially if they're not protesting how democracy should get better, and being able to explain it when asked by a journalist, instead of attacking journalists who are there to find out what you have to say, is, yes, I would say 97% of Canadians don't have personal development, self-actualization, maturity levels to actually deserve the responsibility of voting. That means we need miracle doers, right? Superheroes of like huge magnitude. I'm not talking about Superman. That's not powerful enough. I'm talking about, like the Beyonder kind of stuff. It's almost like Thanos could save you now, because Thanos could make half of you disappear, and hopefully he'd make the more intellectually lazy that won't deviate from the norm disappear, and that would save you. Yeah, or he would make it that there's a way to assess you instantaneously. If that's did I ever pronounce that word before? And make it that it assesses which voter actually is sentient and sapient enough to deserve that responsibility, because it's a huge responsibility, because it only comes once every 4 years, because you guys believe that's how you have a voice, right? It's kind of ridiculous. So that's the question I would ask. How do you propose to acquire the superpowers to take on all the sacrifices and responsibilities and create all these miracles every day to compensate for how Canadians won't do it and will most certainly blame you for it every day?